If I told you there was a fruit that tasted like a cross between mango, banana, and pineapple, needed almost no pesticides to grow, that was nutritionally richer than apples, bananas, oranges, and scientists believe holds one of the most powerful natural anti-cancer compounds ever discovered, and you have never once seen it in a grocery store. Why? I share stories like this because someone needs to know they exist. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The fruit is called the pawpaw. Its scientific name is Asimina triloba. Maybe you have never heard of it, but 30,000 years ago, long before any European ever set foot on this continent, the people who lived here were already growing. The Shawnee people dedicated an entire month of their calendar to the pawpaw harvest, and the Cherokee grew it too, and the Iroquois would mash the ripe flesh into small flat cakes, dry them in the sun, and store them through the long winter months. The first time a European wrote about the pawpaw was in 1541, when a member of Hernando de Soto's expedition moved through the Mississippi Valley and noted that the local people were already farming it. And by then, of course, the pawpaw had been here for a very, very long time. In 1785, George Washington wrote in his own diary on March the 7th that he had planted pawpaw trees at Mount Vernon, and historians who have studied the estate's records over the years have noted that chilled pawpaw was one of the things he most enjoyed eating. Thomas Jefferson, meanwhile, grew pawpaw at Monticello. He sent seeds to friends in Europe, quietly promoting an American fruit to the rest of the world. It is 1806, and the Lewis and Clark expedition is on its way home after mapping the American West, and supplies are running low, and Clark writes in his journal on September the 19th that the party stopped the boats, specifically to gather pawpaws. 33 men kept going in part by a fruit that most Americans today have never tasted. Most of us grew up with a certain idea about what fruit is good for us. Bananas for potassium, oranges for vitamin C, apples for keeping the doctor away. That advice sounds right, but it's not the whole picture. The pawpaw is where that picture starts to fall apart in a way that is genuinely surprising. 100 grams of it quietly covers more than an entire day's need for manganese, a mineral most people have never heard of, but rely on to keep bones strong, blood sugar stable, and cholesterol in check. That alone puts it in a category most fruit never touches, which means that if you have been relying on apples and bananas for your mineral intake, there is a gap in what you are getting that you probably did not know was there. In fact, pawpaw also has 3 times as much vitamin C as an apple, and nearly twice as much as a banana, and it delivers that while also giving you a dozen other things that an orange simply does not. Has 20 to 70 times more iron than a banana or an apple or an orange, which is not a rounding error or a footnote. It is a completely different category of fruit. Iron is where it starts to feel personal, especially as people get older. Pawpaw delivers nearly 40% of your daily iron in that same amount, and iron isn't about numbers on a label. This isn't a snack fruit. It's not empty calories with a vitamin bonus. It's a nutrient-dense food hiding in the fruit aisle of nature. And there is the detail that surprises people most, which is that pawpaw contains all of the essential amino acids, the ones you have probably been told you need meat or protein powder to get, and the fact that a fruit can deliver all of them is something that an apple, an orange, and a banana cannot. But the nutrition is only half of what makes this tree genuinely unusual, because the fact that the pawpaw tree produces its own insecticide built right into its leaves and its bark and its twigs without any human help at all. The compounds that do this are called acetogenins, and they are so effective at deterring and killing insects that deer will not eat the leaves, and rabbits will not touch them, and goats, which will eat almost anything, avoid the foliage entirely. In practical terms, is that an orchard of pawpaw trees will, in most cases, require no chemical spraying at all, while a neighboring apple orchard in the same region might need to be sprayed 10 or 15 or even 20 times in a single growing season, just to keep the insects from destroying the crop. So here's the question that should be sitting in your mind by now. If this tree is this nutritious and it defends itself this well, and it has been growing in this climate for 30,000 years, then why did it disappear from American life almost entirely? In the 1920s and 1930s, grocery stores began replacing local markets, and fruit suddenly had to meet new rules. It was no longer enough to be nutritious or delicious. It also had to survive long-distance shipping and still look perfect on a shelf for weeks. Bananas could do that. They are picked green, shipped around the world, and ripened later with ethylene gas. Pawpaws cannot. Once a pawpaw ripens, it lasts only 2 or 3 days. Pick it too early, and it never ripens at all. You can't rush it, and you can't fit it into a supply chain built on waiting. So, supermarkets moved on to apples, oranges, and bananas, and the pawpaw was left behind. Between 1900 and 1960, more than 50 named pawpaw varieties disappeared, not because they were inferior, but because no one was saving them. A century ago, pawpaws were everywhere in the eastern United States. Today, a state like New York has fewer than 65 pawpaw farms compared to more than 1,600 apple farms. That difference tells the whole story. But there's one thing no one ever tells you. If the pawpaw really disappeared for decades, how do we even know what it can do? In the 1980s, a federally funded research team at Purdue University quietly screened more than 3,500 plant species, searching for compounds that could stop tumor growth. And the pawpaw turned out to be among the most potent things they ever found. Inside its bark twigs and unripe fruit, scientists found acetogenins. In lab studies, those same compounds shut down the energy system certain aggressive cells rely on to survive. The same acetogenins that make this tree immune to insects turn out to do something remarkable inside the human body. And to understand what that is, you do not need a science degree. You just need to understand one thing: energy. Because every cell in your body runs on it, and cancer cells are especially hungry for it. They need enormous amounts of energy to grow and divide and spread. And what acetogenins do is block the specific engine that cancer cells use to produce that energy, which is called complex 1. And without it, those cells simply cannot survive. They starve. Researchers identified more than 40 separate compounds in this single tree alone. But here's what made scientists lean in. It was decades of government-funded research, quietly sitting in scientific journals, while the fruit itself faded from public memory. No one is saying the pawpaw cures anything, but almost no one tells you that one of the most biologically powerful plants ever studied came from a fruit we nearly forgot existed. The same pawpaw extracts that caught researchers' attention were also found to reduce chronic inflammation. Specifically, they lower a signal in the body called tumor necrosis factor alpha. The name sounds dramatic, but what it really does is tell your body to stay inflamed. Inflammation is useful in short bursts. The problem starts when that signal stays switched on for months or years, which is what happens in conditions like heart disease, autoimmune disorders, and some forms of chronic pain. At that point, inflammation stops being protective and starts causing damage. In laboratory studies, pawpaw extracts reduce this inflammatory signal by more than half. That doesn't mean it treats or cures disease, but it does show that this tree interacts with one of the core processes behind many long-term health problems. And that makes it part of a much bigger conversation than most people ever realized. In 1990 Kentucky, State University launched the world's only full-time pawpaw research program. As a result, between 2009 and 2020, the number of commercially available pawpaw varieties grew from 45 to more than 140. In Ohio, a grower named Chris Camille started a small pawpaw festival in 1999. It now draws around 10,000 people every September. Visitors travel from multiple states just to taste the fruit in ice cream, baked goods, and even beer. But the clearest signal of where this is heading comes from agriculture itself. In New York State, climate change is making traditional apple and peach orchards increasingly unreliable. Warmer winters, unpredictable frosts, and longer dry periods are pushing farmers to look for alternatives. Pawpaw, which tolerates these conditions better, is emerging as one of them. Cornell University has confirmed that demand for pawpaw trees has doubled and in some cases tripled in recent years. With everything this tree has going for it, owning one is easier than you think, which makes it weird that almost nobody does. If you live anywhere in the eastern or central United States, you can grow a pawpaw tree. No fancy climate, no special tricks. You just need a bit of patience. Plant 2 different varieties near each other so they can pollinate, and if you buy a grafted tree from a good nursery, you could be picking fruit in 3 to 4 years. Even trees grown from seed will usually fruit in 6 to 8. And after that, it mostly takes care of itself. You don't need to spray it, just decent and slightly moist. For a fruit this special, the tree is surprisingly low maintenance. There is one simple rule before you eat it. Only eat the ripe flesh. The bark, seeds, leaves, and any unripe fruit contain inonosin, so don't eat those. Just scoop out the soft yellow flesh and leave the rest. And if you're pregnant or nursing, check with your doctor first. Research there is still limited. When it's ripe, you'll know. It smells like mango and banana at the same time. Inside, the flesh is pale yellow, thick like custard, and much sweeter than most people expect. For most of human history, this kind of knowledge wasn't rare or special. It was just part of everyday life passed down because people used it, not because it was written down. When those habits disappeared, the knowledge faded with them quietly, without anyone ever deciding that it should. The reason it still exists today isn't because it was rediscovered, but because it never fully left. It was simply ignored. And when someone chooses to pay attention again, they're not bringing something back from the past. They're realizing that a lot of what we think we've lost was actually right there the whole time. Most people will never hear this, not because it isn't true, but because nothing in the system is designed to put it in front of them. No one makes money telling you about a fruit that grows on its own needs, no chemicals, and doesn't belong to any brand. But you heard it. Now you know something most people around you don't. That's not random trivia. That's the kind of information that sticks with you. It changes how you look at food, at convenience, at the idea that the best options are always the ones being pushed in front of you. The food industry will keep selling what's easy to ship, easy to store, and easy to profit from. And that's fine as long as you see it clearly. The real difference is between people who only know what's offered to them and people who know there are other options. Plant the tree, or don't. Either way, you can't unsee what you've just learned, and that's usually where things start to change. Subscribe if you want more stories. The system doesn't go out of its way to show you.